Greetings, brothers and sisters. So there has been a quicker than expected benefit from the Kennedy campaign that I personally didn't anticipate for all of us in the truth community, or people who are seeking truth, people who are, in a sense, craving truth. I got a bunch of things to get to. I want to address the Trump indictment a little bit, some more news on Hunter Biden. But the main thing here is that the Democratic Party is displaying itself, and the powers behind it, and the intention and the system itself is being exposed, which I predicted and said that this would happen, but I didn't think it would happen this quickly. And so first, let's go to this initial clip here, and then I'll explain on the other side. So I want to cover two things first here. This is a recent interview from RFK Jr., and it's entitled Democrats Already Rigging Primary to Screw RFK Jr. And so I knew this was going to happen. I didn't know they were going to come in this hard and this fast, right? This fast and this hard, but they are. And, to anybody watching this, let's just listen to what he says here.
And then the Democratic Party is doing a bunch of things to make sure that even if I win more votes than Joe Biden, that they won't count. Oh, the Democratic.
So again, this is long before the first primary. The first primary takes place like February or January of 2024. And so we have the rest of the year to go through, almost half the year, just before they even vote in the first primary. Debates, I guess, would be starting soon. I don't know. In a normal primary election, probably in the fall, you would start getting debates, right? And they're already rigging this thing.
The party thinks that I may win New Hampshire, so they've removed Joe Biden from New Hampshire, and they say that if any candidate, they've passed a rule that says any candidate who actively campaigns in New Hampshire, that the delegates they win will not be allowed into the convention. And that now what they're saying is they're going to extend that so that if you campaign in New Hampshire, which I've already done, that any votes that you get in Georgia won't count for you either.
So this is astounding, right? First of all, New Hampshire has been the first state to have a primary for years. Ever since I've been alive, ever since I've been aware of a political primary. And it extends far beyond that, right? So this is, for years and years. I don't know when it first started, but let's go so we can search it out here. So here it is. New Hampshire has held a presidential primary since 1916. So this is probably the beginning of this political process. And the tradition of being the first primary state in the United States since 1920. And so we're talking about over 100 years, right? And 100 years is such a long time, especially with all that's happened. And so it's established this tradition over 100 years ago. And one of my first, videos in which I covered Kennedy, I showed you, it might have been the very first one. It was one of the first things I saw. He gave a speech in New Hampshire, and he gave the historical perspective of why New Hampshire was so important. Because it's a very small state, and it has like 40 or more percent, like 45% independent voters. And so it's been a swing state forever. And candidates have to go like basically into the public areas and campaign in a very, face-to-face sort of a way. And they get vetted basically by New Hampshire. And it's an excellent speech. You can find it. He gave it to the New Hampshire Senate, who is, dumbstruck by the Biden administration and the DNC trying to remove them because he's rigging the election, right? He wants South Carolina to be the first state because he won South Carolina before, and that saved his, he would have lost the primary had South Carolina not gone for Biden. He would have been done. He would have had to quit. He would have been out of money. So it was, I think South Carolina was Was it the fourth state or fifth state? I don't know. It was one of the early states, maybe the third one even. But he lost in Iowa, New Hampshire, and he came in fourth and fifth. And I mean, he lost to, Elizabeth Warren. He lost to Pete Buttigieg and Klobuchar and other people who sucked as candidates. So Joe Biden was floundering, and Clyburn, Senator Clyburn, rescued Biden in South Carolina. And so without that, Biden wouldn't be president. And he lost to Bernie Sanders, too, in both of these early states. And so they see the guy's going senile. And if Kennedy wins New Hampshire, all of a sudden people are like, hey, wait, he could win? And they're going to take a look at him, and they're going to compare him to Jojo Magoo, who's, sucks. So they're trying to get rid of New Hampshire. Like a whole state they're not counting. I mean, can you imagine this? Like, this is a dystopian move to say New Hampshire doesn't count, even though they have this tradition, even though it's been very important. This is supposed to be the Democratic Party, the pro-democracy party, the party that's supposed to be here to, make sure elections are fair, right? All the things that they've been saying. And they're literally rigging this even now. And not only ignoring New Hampshire and saying, all right, you guys don't even count. We're not allowing you to do your primary because you guys won't vote for our candidate, which is, this should be a major story. This should break the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is already broken. The media should acknowledge that the Democratic Party is broken and no longer is a part of our democracy. Like, the Democrat Party should just disappear and splinter into something new, maybe multiple parties or whatever. At least like two different, something like that. We should be more like England, where the Republicans and the Democrats now, Democratic parties become multiple parties, right? Maybe a 3, 4, 5 party system, because that would be more of a demographic, would more reflect the demographics of our country. Instead, we have these two parties that they try to fold all these conflicting demographics and belief systems into. But, this is astounding. But to add to it, they're saying not only are you going to lose the votes in New Hampshire, and it's not going to count, but we're also going to say if you run in Georgia, we're not going to count, and you win, we're not going to count those. You won't be able to run in Georgia. We're just randomly taking Georgia, I guess, because of the so-called election interference by Trump, which has nothing to do with what's happening here. They're interfering with this election right in front of our eyes. And so this is a huge thing that's happened. Like right off the bat, we're, months away from this, even being a presidential primary, right? Jojo Biden is pooping his depends and drooling on himself and is breaking down mentally. And they're trying to disclude Kennedy and smear him, which I'll get into more as we move forward here. And so, like, think about what's happening. They're like I said, this is going to break the Democratic Party because the party's broken. And now they're doing this in real time. They're not waiting until the election like they did with Bernie Sanders. And, they did it a little bit before. They rigged it against Bernie, against Hillary, which has been admitted to and documented by Donna Brazile and other people. The news media even to some extent. And then they openly came out and rigged it against Bernie, against Biden. Like senators and high-ranking Democratic officials went on MSNBC and CNN and saying, Bernie Sanders will not win. And then they rigged it, right? Pete Buttigieg and Klobuchar bowed out and threw their support behind Biden. Buttigieg is now transportation secretary. That's what he got out of doing that. He was out of money anyway. And Elizabeth Warren, who was running on Bernie Sanders' platform, she took his platform from him and had a very similar platform, very liberal, very socialist. She stayed in to split the vote between her and Bernie, and Biden ended up winning the next, Super Tuesday in those big states, and then he won. But we saw them. They said, we're going to rig this. We are going to make sure Bernie doesn't win. And now they're doing this with Kennedy, like way in advance, right? But Kennedy, I don't think he's going to take this. I think he'll go third party. I think he's, in this for the fight. I don't think he cares. We'll see. I don't think he's going to quit. I don't think he's going to be dissuaded by the Democratic Party rigging it. And so he might go third party. He might become a third party candidate. And now he has plenty of time to establish himself, so he makes it into the debates like Ross Perot. And so he still gets to debate Biden or whatever piece of crap they throw up there. Kamala sucks. I mean, it's a disaster, right? They're already imploding.
And
What?
this is what they're doing. So I don't know, that my name won't be able to appear on the ballot in Georgia if I campaign to New Hampshire. That's what the DNC is up to now. I mean,
But I thought Democrats are saving democracy. This seems like the opposite of democracy.
So, there it is, right? And so this is huge. But it's with everything else going on, it's not even getting any sort of coverage. Of course, they're not going to talk about this in the mainstream media. So this is called American Values. I guess this is, I don't know if this is an op-ed piece here. I'm not sure what this publication is. I guess it has something to do with Kennedy, right? So this is his subscribed blog. And he wrote this about these charges that he said 88 and 14 as some anti-Semitic conspiracy, right? Farce upon farce, the aftermath of my Secret Service request. A tweet I sent informing people of the Biden administration's decision to deny me Secret Service protection led to massive outpouring of support for my safety, for which I was so very grateful, humbled and grateful. After tens of millions of people viewed the tweet, the Huffington Post led the corporate media in giddily reporting a bizarre conspiracy theory suggesting the tweet contained a series of numbers intended to secretly communicate my alleged affinity for neo-Nazi ideology. Like, it's just ridiculous saying that out loud, right? Like, they know they're lying about it. And so, it's that bad. Now, as if by magic, the underlying issue of politicization of the Secret Service has disappeared, subsumed in the media by one of the most ridiculous conspiracy theories I've ever seen. This is what I talk about with the Cubies, right? People will gravitate to the most bizarre, the most salacious, the most explosive story, right? So Kennedy not getting Secret Service is an interesting story, but it's not, huge story. But Kennedy secretly putting out numbers to show that he's part of some neo-Nazi group is a big story. And that's the kind of thing that people gravitate to. These anti-conspiracy theorists, Huffington Post and the liberal media, Sarah Silverman, these other clowns that got involved in this, they all, they all became what they say they hate, right? No evidence to support this. And he actually goes and shows that there's evidence that he was correct about the dates. And so he said, now, as if by magic, the underlying issue of the politicization of the Secret Service has disappeared, subsumed in the media by one of the most ridiculous conspiracy theories I've ever seen. This is well written. Only in the twisted and polarized era of information warfare waged by a partisan mainstream media would I even consider rebuting such absurdities. So here, very quickly, is what happened. The supposedly meaningful numbers in my tweet came from Gavin de Becker, the world's leading authority on the protection of public figures. His company has been managing my Secret Service team since I announced my run for president. He prepared my application to the DHS and liaised with the Secret Service officials. You can see his views on media lunacy, along with the detailed timeline of which the numbers in which the questions were drawn in the internal memos I share below. Now I can hope to return to my actual issue here. After using government resources to censor me and using government resources to censor me and using government resources to attack me in the White House press room, the Biden administration made the unprecedented decision to deny a political opponent's Secret Service protection during a campaign. Even worse, this is a part of a larger pattern of politicization and weaponizing government agencies to serve the faction in power. The DOJ, the IRS, and the FBI have all turned into tools to harass political opponents. The denial of Secret Service protection is just the latest example. The public's response is that has been clear, and the public's concern and care will remain my enduring takeaway. Okay, so here is what it says about this from Gavin de Becker. And here is the, let me get to that 88 part here. It's Gavin de Becker to Kennedy. Since seeing a few media reports on a truly bizarre projection of meaning into various numbers associated with this process, I'm adding some more numbers to the mix. Though any or maybe many of these dates and numbers might also be perceived as meaning something to somebody somewhere, this accurate account of the details associated with requesting Secret Service protection will maintain more various numbers actually originated. It says here, first discussions between my company and the USS Secret Service 101 days before finally receiving a decision from the DHS. And then my first substantive and detailed discussion with the Secret Service about RFK requesting protection. This was 88 days before the response from the Secretary Mayorkas was received, a number which some people are apparently investing in special meaning. So this guy is confirming that on May 1st, which was 88 days before the tweet by Kennedy, he requested this formally for the Secret Service. And that whatever they're floating out there is like the Epstein Island flight log that's some made up bogus right-wing thing, right? Like people just make up paperwork, and they're using that to, that one piece of paper that there's a disparity in the dates, right? And so, that's all of it, right? I guess the 14-day thing here is somewhere as well. But, this is a long letter, and nobody's covering this. It says here, this is the 14 days here. I told RFK Jr. about the meeting with the Secret Service as likely during the waiting period. He said he looks forward to it. I was hoping it could be while he's on the East Coast on the June 7th could be great, but that's not within the 14 days. Do you think the decision process can ever take longer than 14 days, or is there no way? Does the 14-day clock start when the wet signature request reaches DHS? Is a weird sentence. I guess you get rid of the. Or does the email the electronic version of the Secret Service campaign coordinators? So they didn't know when the 14 days started, but there's 14 days and 88 days in all of this, right? And so for them to come up with this crazy conspiracy theory and doubling down on something everyone knows he's not anti-Semitic. I mean, at least, these people who aren't, NPC dopes that watch the mainstream media. But then this is the other piece here. So I searched RFK Jr. the other day, and the number one thing that came out, this is just RFK Jr., is this. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s campaign bankrolled by Republican mega donor. RFK Super PAC got more than half its funds from GOP mega donor. What are Bobby Kennedy's donors? Who are Bobby Kennedy's donors, right? And then these are the other stories. RFK was a compulsive womanizer, and yes, we should care. And then these other things about his positions. But when I first searched this yesterday, let's get to page 2 here. What is the problem with RFK Jr.? These are all Google's news media here. And this is RFK Jr. Super PAC. Super PAC. Super PAC. This is spreading misinformation draws scrutiny. RFK comments spreading misinformation draws scrutiny. He's been clearly censored and screwed over. RFK sues state actor YouTube for censoring his interviews. Well, that's good that he's doing that. RFK Super PAC, RFK Super PAC, RFK fumes over Biden administration Secret Service protection. It just goes on from there. It's pages of stuff to do. There's a DeSantis thing, but it's pages of the Super PAC, and I saw like 3 or 4 pages that were just Super PAC coverage because they want Democratic voters to think he's a Republican. I'll get into this more. I'm going to read an article about his interview with Matt Hoffa as we move over to the voiceover. But they're pushing this idea that RFK Jr. is really a Republican, racist, Trump wannabe in Kennedy clothing. That's their position. That's what they're telling their Democratic morons who voted for Biden. And if they voted for Biden, they'll believe this. If you voted for Biden, you'll easily believe this, right? So, I don't want to say I predicted this. I don't know if predicted is the right word, but I said this thing was going to happen. And what I said was that Kennedy would break the Democratic Party. And really, it wasn't that he would break it. He's just exposing that it's broken. And I said it was going to happen just like this, maybe like less than a month ago. And I thought it was going to take some time. I didn't think it would be this quick. I didn't think it was going to be this obvious, but it's happened, which is a big win for us in the truth community. Now, first of all, those of you who've watched my videos for some time know that I say things will happen a certain way, and they happen that way. And not because this is I'm some great person or something, or I'm even bragging about this, because it's something that anybody can do on some level. It's something everybody should be doing on some level. When you engage and connect with divinity, and you hone your heart as an instrument of understanding or connecting with the source, you're shown things, right? And this is a very limited, I'm not impressed with myself. Like, people say, oh, you were right about this, you were right about that. It's not impressive to me, because I know that, in this small sphere of activity, which is known as like the truth community or my life or whatever it is, God will show me things, right? And if you put in the work and you actually connect to God, you find a way to connect to God, and we do the gratefulness meditation. It has to be some method, and you have to be serious about it. Most people are scared of God. Most people are scared of their full potential. Most people are scared of themselves, the soul within them, even more than their dark side. Like, people are scared of their dark side, what they might become, their potential demon. Like, you have a potential saint and a potential demon inside yourself. You have those possible outcomes. And people are scared of the darkness within them, but they're even more scared of the divinity, because they, especially their ego, doesn't want to give up control, doesn't want to change, right? Doesn't want to evolve, and doesn't want to ask God the questions. People want answers, but they don't ask God the questions. They would rather, wallow around in victim consciousness and blame everything as being unfair, instead of asking God why. Why is this happening? Why is something that seems so unfair, seems so, evil happening? Why are bad things happening? Why are bad people in power? Why are good people suffering? Why? What's happening? And the answers are there. The answers are there. God will give you answers. God isn't ever withholding information. There are certain times in your life you can't know certain things. I was talking about this in my journey series, the end of my next journey series, the 114th version. How, and I go into a more lengthy explanation, but if you go back in time, like, in terms of hindsight, like, people can see on a different level. If you've evolved and your consciousness evolved, and you could go back in time and make better decisions and do things differently because you have more wisdom, you have more, ability, whatever. People want to go back in time and change decisions and regrets and things that they did. But you could never go back in time with a higher level of consciousness and live through the things you lived through, living back in your parents' house, going to school. If your present consciousness and mind, it could go back to when you were 7, 8, 9 years old, right? And, people have that. They see that happen in, movies where somebody goes back and they're their young self again as an adult, and they, now know things that they didn't know. But you could never tolerate that. Like, you have to have a certain level of stupidity, a certain level of naivete. You have to have a certain level of innocence in things. You have to have, a lack of perception to just get through those years of your life, right? And you're learning, you're evolving, your consciousness is evolving. And so as it does that, and you work towards that, you start to see things, right? The second master of the Sajmark system, Babaji, was this great meditator, and he would write in his diary, such and such a spiritual condition, he experienced a spiritual condition. He'd say, and I was shown it appeared before me. God showed me what I was, experiencing, and the concept of it, the whole whatever it was, appeared before him. And there's different levels of this, and everybody can have access to it, but you have to be willing to accept reality as it is, and most people don't want to do that. Most people don't want to hear the truth about themselves or the truth about the nature of the universe, the truth about God, and what's happening here on planet Earth, and the things that you need to do once you have the truth. Because once you have the truth, what are you going to do with it, right? What are you going to, do to change your life and accommodate the truthful aspect of things? Because most people are like, well, I still want to go do what I wanted to do in the first place. And so let's get back to this Kennedy thing, because, like I said, it appeared before me when I first saw Kennedy and I first saw the way that things were going with the Democratic Party. I said this was going to happen exactly the way it happened, which is they were going to expose themselves as they were going to have to rig it against him. And I thought they would wait to the primaries, but they didn't even wait. Like they have, in a way that's undeniable. And so what I was saying was, like, supporting Kennedy, and you don't really have to because there's already a growing support in one way or another. But by supporting him and making him a viable candidate and making him somebody that they don't want to have a microphone, like they're not going to stick a microphone in front of a truther. And you can already see, based in what happened with Trump, their strategy. First, they're going to rig the election as best they can against Kennedy. But if there's some way that he ends up winning and becoming president, then they will do what they did to Trump, but even more so. You can see that what they're treating Kennedy now with smears and lies and just constant court battles and charges and obstructionist politics, so he can't get anything done. And you're saying, well, then why vote for him? Why, support him? Because you got to make them do that, right? You have to. This is bigger than our lives, and the system can't be saved. I've said this before. It shouldn't be saved. We should all know by now that this is a bad system. It has a bad effect on people. And we're people who have a good lifestyle. Like Americans have a better lifestyle. They're giving homeless people $600 a month in San Francisco. I showed you a video clip of a homeless guy saying, yeah, they give us $600 a month to be here. They want the homeless there to bring the city down. But anyways, to understand this, worldwide, half the people in the world exist on less than $2 a day. $2 a day and less. So that's half the people. Their whole yearly income is $730 or less. 1/3 of the people, it's $1 a day, right? Which is $365 a year. So a homeless person in San Francisco in 1 month gets paid a lump sum of more than most people more than half the people in the world live on in a whole year. So think about that. 2 months, they practically doubled the average person's yearly income. So, and that's the homeless people here in America. We have a better lifestyle. We have access to more things. We have more freedoms, freedom of choices. We have more choices. And so we have things to lose. We have things that we don't want to give up. But other people in the world, they don't. They are suffering. They don't even have the material benefits, but they also have spiritual deprivation. So their lives suck epically more than ours. And we can't even think about how their lives are, how it is to wake up and be one of these people. And they're undernourished, malnourished. They don't have proper brain development, lack of protein and lack of nutrition, and they don't have education, they don't have consciousness, they don't have the ability for abstract thought. I mean, most people, even in America, don't have the ability for abstract thought. If you talk to the average person, if you talk to 10 people, 6 of them you couldn't really have a reasonable conversation with. And people are getting stupider. I mean, this if you try to have a conversation about any of these things, family members, friends, people, and they just shut you down. There's like a wall between you. They can't hear it. They're not willing to hear it. what you're saying to them is scary, or they don't have the raw ability, they don't have the brain matter to, they don't have the consciousness, the mind, and the evolution to understand what you're talking about. I mean, that's the majority of people. So it's, that's reality here on planet Earth. We have a bad system, and it's taking us in the wrong direction. And, it's there. And this is displaying it. This is something I talk about all the time. And the system will do anything to keep itself going, even though it should have died years ago. And the people that are there, the gatekeepers, will do anything that they deem, they deem necessary for the survival of the system. And so somebody telling the truth, being sincere, is a threat to the system. And so they're going to do what they're doing here. And so even if he wins, it's impossible for him to change anything. They're going to make sure that he is demonized. So why is that important? Why is that important to go through that frustrating exercise? Waking up every day, if you're a Kennedy fan, or you can see that he's attempting to do a good job, and watching him get done the way they do us every day, the way that they treat us unfairly every day, the way that they rig the system against us every day, so that people who are seeing the truth and are able to verbalize the truth are censored or deplatformed or are, demonized and pathologized and all these things. Why is that important? I've talked about this in the past. I haven't talked about this in a while. But one of the things that we're supposed to be doing here is witnessing, is to connect to God on a, deeper and deeper levels, and witnessing what's going on, because there is a divine system, and there are contingencies, and there's a plan, and there's an answer for every problem, every wrong choice, there's consequences, there are outcomes, right? Inevitably, they say the divine wheels turn slowly, the wheels of God turn slowly, but they turn, right? And a big part of that is witnessing and having what's happening be exposed. Now, the Democratic Party, this is the example, this is what we're seeing, has been saying that they're the party that is the protectors and the guardians of democracy. That, and I'll get to Trump's whatever it is, his indictment in a little bit, which is a part of this story. That they're the protectors against the big lie and the conspiracies, and they call Trump a conspirator. He's got co-conspirators to overturn the rightful outcome of an election. And they're all about elections, and they're all about voting. And they are the ones who are protecting us from the, totalitarianism that Trump represented, of rigging an election, fixing an election, trying to overturn a just election, right? And that they're they're battling the election deniers. But we already know that they rigged the election against Bernie Sanders twice, which I said, right, that, we saw it happen, and they were going to have to do this against Kennedy, and they're already doing it. They're also supposed to be the party of liberalism and free expression, right? The Republicans and the Christians want to censor you. The Republicans and the Christians, the right-wing people, want to tell you what to think, and, the mansplain things to you and dominate you and make you, force you to believe what they believe, or force you to parrot back and say what they indoctrinate you in some way, right? That was how the hippie movement was all about free speech and freedom of expression and artistic expression and being liberal, like being free. That was all about freedom, right? It was all about freedom of the hippie movement, free love, free expression, free sex and drugs and rock and roll, anything that you could do, right? That you were able to do things that were forbidden, and under the structure of the Christian, the right-wing Christian dominated system that we had when I grew up. And that was all about they're trying to take away and censor you and stop you from your freedom of speech. There was the hippie movement and all these things, right? So that's the liberal party. That's supposed to be about those things. They came out in the Kennedy hearing and said that if you are talking anything that isn't about the official story, you're not protected under the First Amendment, which is the exact reason why the First Amendment exists, which I covered this in my last video. So that was the first big thing, right? Second big thing was that somebody who was censored and who was treated unfairly and had his First Amendment right violated by the current president and his current political opponent in Kennedy versus Bobby versus Jojo Magoo, then that person was demonized and called a racist and called anti-Semitic because that's the only thing they can do. They have to just out and out lie in a way that you have to be like brain dead to believe. And that was their strategy. Not to admit that they did wrong, not to correct the error of their ways, but to just strong arm the whole process. I mean, if you saw the court hearing, and then they followed it up with these, bogus claims about these numbers that, this candidate who's already at threat because he's talking truth to power and has a family history. There's a law based in his dad being assassinated, and he can't get Secret Service protection. Instead of admitting that they're denying something that they should be giving, but he's evil. The Democrat Party says he's evil. He's a racist. He's anti-Semitic. He's a right-wing, horrible person. They're never going to admit they're lying, hypocritical pieces of boop, but they are doing that in not so many ways. So here's an article. I have to read it from my phone. I don't have internet this morning, so I haven't actually shot the clips that I'm talking about, but I've already seen the videos myself. Okay, so internet just came back up, which is great because it's a lot easier for me to read this here. So this is the Readout blog from Joy Reid, and this is a author named Jahan Jones, an African-American author, because it's important to know that because of the headline and what's in here. JFK Jr. courts black conspiracy theorists on hip-hop podcast. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the conspiracy theorist and Democratic presidential candidate, recently took to Math Hoffa's hip-hop podcast to spread dubious claims. Now, we know that there are conspiracy theorists because there was a conspiracy, or this idea that RFK is involved in some anti-Jewish movement because he used the numbers 14 and 88. That was all the evidence they had. That he has some kind of anti-Jewish agenda, right? But they put that out there with no evidence, which is slandering him and doing, damage to his campaign because they are saying that Trump has conspired to overturn the election. And Hillary Clinton talked about a vast right-wing conspiracy against her husband. They're conspiracy theorists, like everybody is, except theirs are reasonable and ours are crazy. That's the way that they frame it, right? But for the black community and any community, the truth community, like for us, he's reached out to us. Like he's going around the internet. Bobby Kennedy is going around the internet. And he is, and he's going to all kinds of different demographics and listening to what they have to say and addressing them in a frank and authentic way. And in terms of the black community, one of the things you hear from them time and time again is that they're being ignored, that people aren't willing to address them. I watched a little bit of the Ice Cube interview with Tucker Carlson, and he said he got a call from he reached out to the Biden administration, and he talked to somebody, and it was more like they were trying to take his temperature to see if he was somebody they could work with to push their agenda, like not listen to his concerns. This is something that's an ongoing, I want to say complaint because it's, it exists in reality of the black community, that they're not, people don't come and actually reach out and hear what their issues are, and then actually, instead of just giving them political talking points, talk to them like human beings, right? Talk to them the way that RFK Jr. did with Math Hoffa. It's a good interview if you haven't seen it, but he's done this with so many different people and groups. And so this person writes, Whenever I see a right-wing political figure embracing some hyper-masculine element of the black culture, I think back to Steve Bannon's prediction that the GOP would win 50% of the male black vote in 2022. And so this guy is already defining RFK Jr. as a right-wing political figure, and he is very liberal on most of his issues, and he's been a Democrat his whole life. The things that he's talking about are, the things that he's opposed to in the Democratic Party are ways that the Democratic Party has moved away from its original ideals in the 60s and 70s of it, when his family was prominent. These liberal ideas, right? They are no longer liberal. They want to censor people, and they want to mansplain things to people. They want to, liberal explain things to you. They want to tell you what's up, the way that, the right wing used to do to them. And to call him a right wing political, call him a right wing political figure, this goes back to them, this thing where I showed you the articles in the Google search result that talked about just his. If you Google Bobby Kennedy, it's about all negative things, and in this case, he's taking money from the right wing. That's what the Democrats are being told. Republicans like RFK Jr., which I talked about earlier, and so you can't like him because he might actually bring people together. He can't be liked by both the Republicans and the Democrats, right? He can't be someone that both sides actually like. That can't be, that can't be true. So he has to be a right-wing political figure. Not because of what he believes, because that's the category they have to put him in. So this says here, so the guy shows the comment from Steve Bannon. And he says here, but Bannon's remark was telling. It showed that conservatives saw an opportunity to reach black men susceptible to right-wing propaganda and cleave them from the block of black voters who typically vote for Democrats. All this came to mind the other day when my YouTube algorithm fed me a video of bigoted conspiracy theorist Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s appearance on the hip-hop focused podcast. So now they're calling him bigoted, right? And it links to an article from MSNBC that says, Kerry Kennedy rebukes brother RFK after he linked COVID-19 and Jewish people. Now, Kennedy, or at least my wife was telling me this, I don't know if he said it, but his family, many of them work for the Bidens. They have a relationship with the Biden family, the Biden business, the Biden, administration. They work for the Biden administration. They're still, Democratic people. And so, there's a family rift here. And they have, that sucks for him and whatever's going on there. But certainly having his sister, he didn't go, that whole thing was bogus, right? Which we all know about. Anybody can see he's not a racist. He's not anti-Semitic. And so this guy is, he's already called him he's called him a conspiracy theorist multiple times. He's called him bigoted. He's called him right-wing. And they said the Democratic presidential candidate joined battle rapper Math Hoffa's podcast, ironically named My Expert Opinion, which Kennedy used to spread his far from expert opinions on an array of conspiracy theories. This time, however, his words were carefully couched in the parlance of social justice. He said toxicity in the water supply is one of the worst problems for black people, but failed to mention that also uses this topic as a way to spout conspiracy theory about transgender people. At this point, he even left the door open to the idea the government is being run by the secret cult of devil worshippers. Okay, so I didn't hear that last part. The secret cult of devil worshippers. They've only put out, Math Hoffa has only released sections of the interview. I haven't gone directly to his channel to see all the sections, the ones that have been recommended to me. So I don't, see it all. But what this guy's saying here about, he failed to mention that he also uses the topic as a way to spout a conspiracy theory about transgender people. That also links to an article that atrazine in the water supply is contributing to sexual dysphoria in kids. This is something that he wrote in his, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did a an op-ed piece on some place called Political Fact. So he was talking about two different things. This guy's lying. The guy who's writing this is, this is all, slanderous kind of misrepresenting of the truth, because what RFK Jr. was talking about was the freshwater conditions in Flint, Michigan, and he is a passionate battler against mercury. Like, he has done more for the liberal environmental green cause than practically anybody in terms of the litigator. Cleaning out the Hudson River in New York is he's done epic things here. Where it was considered like a toxic. Now you can fish out of the river and swim in it and things like this, right? And it is, been reversed by his policies, suing these big businesses that were dumping mercury and other things into the river and ultimately into the ocean and into your food supply, into the fish and things that you eat. And so he's, helped everybody. And this is a democratic and liberal issue. But what he's talking to Matt Hoffa about was the Flint, Michigan water problem that was affecting mostly African American people. The atrazine that's in the water supply is something different. And European countries, which are very hyper-liberal, have banned atrazine. You can look it up. It's not like a secret. And a black liberal scientist who worked for one of those prestigious universities, Cal or something. I think he worked for Cal University, which, it wasn't Stanford, but it was one of those prestigious universities there. And he was hired by, I think it's called Syngenta, the company that produces atrazine. The university was hired to do testing. And he found that the stuff that was in atrazine, its effect on frogs would actually turn male frogs into female frogs. And this was presented on Democracy Now! You can find the interview. And this guy was harassed, threatened. They tried to ruin his career. He was, I believe, fired from the university for his discoveries, for his scientific discoveries. And this has been well documented. So this isn't some crazy conspiracy theorist. It's backed by science. And it has nothing to do with his conversation. So this guy is purposefully misleading his readers. Ultimately, they're disrespectful to their own audience. Like, if his audience is the black community, and he's trying to disparage Kennedy and slander him to his community, that he, a guy who might actually do right by the community, not Joe Biden, who, he goes after African American votes, but is a clear racist. Like Joe Biden is just, his brain and his ways expresses himself, the things that he said, and he's just, a corporate-owned shill, right? He's just a piece of boop. Boop. And so if he's steering people away from that, right, this guy, he's steering African Americans away from Kennedy, who actually might do right by him or them as a group. And so he also told Hoffa that he shouldn't talk about the V word, his code for the boob. If you're on YouTube, you shouldn't talk about that, alluding to the action the platform has taken against him over the boop misinformation. Now, I believe the boop is targeted black people in ways that, that's been a consensus among many of us, right? That they're being targeted as a group. Like, all of us are being targeted, but if you look at, whatever that's happening, we've seen this with, people's hearts stopping and all these other things. There seems to be a higher rate from the news stories that we're seeing amongst, cardiac events amongst black people, people of color, African American people. And so, if this guy's saying this to this community, and Kennedy is actually doing something that would be beneficial, that would be maybe life-saving to this community, right, in terms of his policies. So this guy's actually betraying his race in a sense, his demographic, his audience, by slandering and warping the truth about what Kennedy actually is about, right? And, he goes on from here. He says, Kennedy bid for the Democratic presidential nomination has raised eyebrows among liberals. He has garnered cheers from conservative extremists like Bannon and Alex Jones. He has portrayed himself as a victim of government censorship. So we saw in the censorship hearing, the first thing that was presented was, substantial evidence that Joe Biden, it's fact that Joe Biden reached out to various social media platforms, one in particular, I think it was Twitter, and wanted a post taken down about Hank Aaron dying shortly after saying he got the boob. And that has everything. This is all woven into what this guy was saying earlier, right? This has all of that in this, in this hit piece, this blog post or whatever it is, right? He's demonizing him. He's saying he's a right-wing person. He's nothing like Steve Bannon or Alex Jones. He's not anything like them, right? His positions and all these things are so far away from that. And so the guy goes on to say this. He has portrayed himself as a victim of government censorship, which again, like making him sound like he's he's got victim consciousness. But we know that to be factual. Like that was established in the hearings. And there's a court ruling in Louisiana that has said the Biden administration was doing this. So we know that's factual, that he has been censored. We all are. He has been a frequent guest on Fox News and other right-wing outlets. He has high praise. He has had high praise for Tucker Carlson. At least one super PAC is backing him, is fueled by a right-wing Republican, and he has embraced both Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Not exactly the makings of a liberal icon. And then he said this was the kicker. He said, at a recent hearing, Delegate Stacey Plaskett of the Virgin Islands took Kennedy to task for his dangerous views on public health. And we all know that was an embarrassing display, right? Stacey Plaskett. That was embarrassing. But all of this, what he's doing here, ultimately would hurt the black community and his audience, because we saw what Joe Biden did, right? And they are just bold-faced lying and misrepresenting the truth and all of it, right? This is just one of many hit pieces out there. And what they're trying to tell all the Democrats is this guy's a Republican in Democratic clothing, in Kennedy family clothing, right? That's their message, and that he's a racist and he's anti-Semitic, crazy conspiracy theorist. He's dangerous, and so we have to get rid of him as a candidate. He can't even be considered a candidate. Anything that we do is justified because he's a danger to you, and this is their position. And so they've been exposed, like they've displayed themselves. The whole, all of it, the media, the Democratic Party, all of it. Like they are just, they're not trying to hide it anymore. They've gone full, Mordor. They've gone, they're like the Sith Lord, and it's when the evil emerges and displays itself, right? When there's like this, hidden evil, and it's, something they don't want to admit to, but then it emerges, and it's, counter to everything that they claim to believe in and what their party's about. And now it's been exposed, and that's important. That's, it's showing you reality. They can't hide it anymore. So let's get into the other stuff here. So I'm going to show you a little video, 3 video clips of MSNBC, maybe CNN. I think it's all MSNBC. But CNN the same way. And them celebrating Trump's indictment.
I have to tell you that as soon as I started reading that indictment yesterday,
look at how happy these guys are. As much as ghouls can be happy, like I don't think they have the biological, certainly not the spiritual, but the biological biochemistry reactions to experience real joy, right? This is like, adrenochrome happiness, right? She's wearing Fire Marshal Schill, and let me see if I can find the Fire Marshal Schill picture here. Fire Marshal Schill and the hammer guy. The Hill Hammer thing that I did, the meme, I just showed it, so I won't show it again here, but was about him saying, the first thing I ever did on Lawrence O'Donnell, I think, was when Nancy's husband got the beat down. And he had the audacity to claim, well, let me find the video because it's that bad. So this is his report, Where's Nancy?, about the Paul Pelosi attack.
And we know what the assassin was going to do with that hammer if Nancy Pelosi had been home and if he was struggling with her over that hammer. And you know there would have been a struggle because this is who Nancy Pelosi is.
Secret Service said they have dissuaded him from coming to Capitol Hill. They told him they don't have the resources to protect him here. So at the moment he is not coming, but that could change.
Oh, he comes, I'm going to punch him out. This is
Oh,
my
no,
moment.
I would pay to see
I've
that.
been waiting for this, for trespassing on the Capitol grounds. I'm going to punch him out, and I'm going to go to jail, and I'm going to be happy.
If that Trump supporter who broke into Nancy Pelosi's home had come at the Speaker of the House with a hammer, he was going to have a fight on his hands.
What an ass clown, right? Just because she's talking tough to a camera, she's a shriveled up old ghoul, who's been dead for years and is like 90 years old and weighs like, 120 pounds, like 5'1". And she's like, what, 70, 80, 90. And this was a young man, her husband's lover probably. And he had a hammer, right? He didn't need one to beat Nancy in a fight, right? And this clown's saying that Nancy would have fought back just because she said that she wanted to punch Trump out on the big event in January. This is what this clown's reasoning ability is. Oh yeah, that guy would have had a fight on his hands if Nancy, that tiger cat, had been home.
And he was going to try to fracture her skull. He was going to try to murder her, which is exactly what he is now accused of.
Okay, so they forgot about this whole story because all the evidence points to that this was Paul Pelosi's lover. And the guy has kids, and all these people that talked about the guy. He wasn't a Trump supporter. He wasn't any of these things, right? He wasn't looking for Nancy. He was there with Paul Pelosi. They were like in their underwear. The video's out there. So here they are, right?
I started thinking about you, and I started thinking about that decision you made to establish that.
And then after I was aroused,
January 6th committee to appoint exactly who you appointed, and I was left wondering if we would be here tonight if you hadn't made those decisions.
exactly, we would be here tonight. Of course we would. All roads led to Trump being, Trump failed that whole post-election failure. He failed on the Operation Warp Speed. He failed when he shut down the government. He failed when he didn't fight back against any of these COVID restrictions. I mean, he failed COVID. He failed the election. He failed the post-election. And he failed his supporters. And Trump riled up his supporters and sent them down to the Capitol. And, you can hear his words, and they'll play them over and over again. He just walked right into a trap, right? And you can say, well, they let him into the Capitol, all these kind of things that, Republicans say. But if Trump didn't run his trap and get everyone to come to D.C. for a purposeless protest that was not going to result in overturning the election, it wasn't. They were clearly running Trump out of town, and Trump supporters being upset about it didn't cross their mind, right? And they wanted protests. I mean, look at how much they've talked about the big event in January and the big lie. Look at how much they talk about that since. I'd run the big lie compilation, but this is already a long video. So this was a win for them, and Trump walked right into it. But having said that, there are two things that we now know from the censorship hearing, or more than that, because I'm going to show you some Hunter Biden stuff, is that the idea that the election was clean has been destroyed. The idea that it was a perfect election, it was a fine election, by the fact that there was censorship of the Hunter Biden story, and there's been censorship and all these things that have come forward, not just censorship, but all these like shenanigans that have come forward that we now know makes this election completely tainted, right? Not that, the way Trump supporters say, the way Trumpers think, it shows that this thing was, of course, we know it was rigged against Bernie Sanders twice before this. And so, these guys that come up here, I saw Jamie Raskin talking about, I don't have it here, but, all these shills that are out there saying that what they did was perfectly, what Biden did and the way the election was handled was perfectly wonderful and above board. And we know that's not the case because they excluded the Hunter Biden story, and they're still doing that now. And the way that they're treating Kennedy, they no longer can gloat like this, right? Because we know this is a one-sided affair. Like, it's one side gets punished, one side gets demonized. Of course, there's counterculture, but in terms of the mainstream media and social media, and it's all censored and rigged, right?
Well, thank you. I listened to your presentation with great emotion, with great pride in the work of the January 6th committee, the leadership of Benny Thompson, Chairman Benny Thompson of Mississippi.
Benny Thompson.
Mississippi, Vice Chair of the committee, Liz Cheney of Wyoming.
Liz Cheney.
Were great leaders of the committee, but every member made his or her contribution with patriotism.
Patriotism. Now, when Trump is actually in jail and behind bars and he's in prison and he's done with and we're no longer talking about Trump, I'll believe it then. Otherwise, it's just one of those distractions, Trump things that there's never any resolution. They just throw this out here, another indictment, right? When he's in jail, he's in jail. Other than that, it's just a show. And then these two dopes, this is just stuff that came up.
Politico's Jonathan Lemire back with us and joining the discussion. We have congressional investigation reporter for the Washington Post, Jackie Alamany, MSNBC legal analyst Neil Katyal, MSNBC chief legal correspondent and anchor of The Beat on MSNBC, Ari Melber, and NBC News national affairs analyst John Heilman. Ari, I'd like to start with you.
Well, what a motley crew.
And can we just
be happy? At least put on some smiles. At least Nancy and the Hammer guy were smiling. These guys are still so somber and dour, right?
talk about tomorrow at 4
put on a big grin.
o'clock? What can we expect?
Well, I think we have the federal arraignment and we have the precedent of his
You can't even match up his voice and his lips.
last one. So you've seen how that looks. And Donald
Look how low tech this is.
Trump's crowds, the type of things that he threatened, didn't really.
Okay, let's move forward here. Get away from Ari Milbler.
Brilliantly takes off the playing field in the first couple of paragraphs. The second thing they're talking about is that he really did think he won. Of course, there's so much evidence that he told other people that he lost, and he couldn't believe that he lost to Joe Biden. But just for argument's sake, let's say
okay, so they should be celebrating. This is just you got one happy moment here. Your own candidate's a dope. I mean, life is going south. You're married to each other, right? Show some joy.
There are 6 unindicted co-conspirators here, unnamed as well. They're just called Conspirator 1 through Conspirator 6.
Co-conspirators, right? This is a conspiracy. This is a conspiracy to commit election fraud and to have an insurrection, which, the whole thing's a joke. To call it an insurrection. The other thing about this is they talk about what a dope Trump is and what a fool he is and how incompetent he is and what a bumbling idiot he is. And this is the same thing for all you Jojo Magoo haters. You can't be both a bumbling idiot and a mastermind, criminal mastermind. I say this over and over again. You have to pick one or the other. Like, you can't be both, right? You're either a dope and you're a fool, or you're some kind of criminal mastermind playing a dope or a fool. But they treat Trump like he's a joke most of the time, and yet they accuse him of serious wrongdoings, right? And like he's, some kind of brilliant criminal mastermind.
NBC News can now confirm that co-conspirator, I should say, number 1 appears to be Rudy Giuliani, and they are are described in this indictment as an attorney who was willing to spread knowingly false claims.
You know, they've kind of wrecked a president getting indicted, right? It's just a president getting indicted. This is like the first time this has happened. Nixon got impeached, right? I don't think any president's gone to prison. Certainly not anything recently. And so this is, you know, a big deal. And it should be a big story. But Hunter Biden's story is far more interesting. RFK Jr.'s candidacy is far more interesting. And then so many other more things that are out there on the internet. This is unwatchable. Like they're covering Trump's indictment. He's hours away from getting arrested. And it's not even newsworthy because it's just so fake and contrived. And again, you know, they need Trump. Their life centers around Trump. What happens when Trump is gone? They have next to nothing. You know, what are they going to have? I guess they have to come up with a new villain, maybe RFK Jr. or someone, who knows, right? But either way, like it's, you know, it's a non-story. This is a few Jojo Magoo things.
It's been alleged that the allies of Giuliani were working on a side deal at the same time to make millions in Ukraine. Just been alleged. I don't know for a fact.
So it's a conspiracy theory, right? You know, they have conspiracy theories about Trump, but they're not conspiracy theorists. They're not crazy like us. They're not crazy conspiracy theorists. Their conspiracies are real.
A corrupt scheme with an additional helping of corruption and self-dealing on the side. Classic Trump.
Classic Trump. So, you know, we now know, which we always knew, that Hunter Biden was selling access for his Ukrainian business deal, and that they've laundered money, which we don't know for a fact, but we suspect, through the Ukrainian debacle. This is the kind of thing that scumbags like Jojo Magoo do. Not that Trump isn't a grifter, because Trump and his family made a killing on his presidency. They made a lot of money and got a lot of, contacts and things. I mean, they raised their level of, wealth and everything else from his presidency in corrupt means. Like Trump was corrupt, but Biden is, just so much worse, and they're not at all other than little bits and things from Fox News. But he's a corrupt MNF'er. He's a lifelong corrupt politician. He had one job, and that's it. But then there's this tweet. Joe Biden has been around so long, he's running for president against the son of a man whom he plagiarized 35 years ago. That's a great little, just that itself. I haven't even seen this part yet.
Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children or the joy of their. Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
Cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials.
It doesn't measure the beauty of our poetry, the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, the integrity of our public official.
It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country.
It counts neither our wit nor our wisdom, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country.
It measures everything in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America, except why we are proud that we are American.
That bottom line can tell us everything about our lives, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America, except that which makes us proud to be American.
So he ripped off RFK Jr., originally Bobby Kennedy, and now he's running against his son. I mean, that's such a head exploding moment there. Hunter Biden whistleblower Gary Sharpley claims FBI spooked corroborating witness. And we know that this was happening. The FBI and the White House and the Biden administration has been intimidating people to not testify against Hunter, Representative Dan Goldman mocked for the claim Joe Biden talked about the weather with Hunter's business partners. And so I don't know if this is the guy here.
He did describe that there were approximately 20 occasions over the course of their nearly decade-long business relationship where when one...
Hunter was smoking crack during that time and acknowledged that he was incapable of doing business because he was smoking crack and banging strippers and prostitutes and losing computers and, you know, threatening to commit suicide and having his ex-wife, his brother's widow, who he was banging, throw his handgun away because she worried that he might hurt himself, and the Secret Service had to investigate it, right?
One of them called the other, that Hunter Biden would ask his father to say hello to whomever he was at dinner. He said there were some times when it was friends and sometimes when it was potential business partners or business partners. But the witness was unequivocal and stated very clearly that they never discussed any business on that phone conversations. There were niceties and there was a hello and we talked about the weather or whatever it was, but it was never any business.
And so let's say that's true. Well, that would be Hunter Biden saying, here's my dad. He doesn't want to get incriminated. He wants plausible deniability, but I'm putting him on the phone so you guys know he's in the room and he's on board with what they're saying. And that would be like a criminal way, a mobster way of doing it, right? That you would have your dad say things that it would never come back to him in the court of law, like something like this happens. But he would acknowledge, yeah, I'm here with my son. Yeah, we're cool. Yeah, I'm on board, right? Without saying, you know, something direct as that, right? And this clown, I mean, what a piece of crap. Like Joe Biden's deep involvement in Hunter business with Chinese, Russian, and Ukrainians revealed in Devin Archer's full damning testimony.
To be, you know, completely clear on the calls, I don't know if it was an orchestrated call or not. It certainly was powerful, though, because, you know, if you're sitting with a foreign business person and you hear the vice president's voice, that's prize enough. I mean, that's pretty impactful stuff.
So, you know, we know what happened here. His dad said he was never involved with the business, but this is involvement. And we now see that with the Democrats, they're starting to throw Hunter under the bus and say that Hunter was involved with this business. He was selling access, but it wasn't real access, right? That's their claim. He was selling access, but Joe wasn't giving access. And, you know, that's all they can say. But we all know that's BS, right? Having the vice president or the president on the phone with you is giving access. He's giving access to these people by talking to them. That's what access is. It's direct contact. I mean, this is you're talking to the vice president, that kind of contact. Not with his aides, not with his business manager, but with him directly. That's what Hunter Biden was providing. Biden's on a bike again, says he won't follow Trump's arraignment.
He's wearing the same stuff as yesterday, yeah. Oh, he's got different shorts on.
You mean you're keeping track of his shorts that he wore before, or he just changed his shorts now because he pooped his pants? Be more clear, buddy. You're a reporter. There he goes. He's going to fall again. You're going to fall?
Morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. President. Have you been briefed on Niger? Will you talk to us on your way back, Mr. President? Probably not.
These people actually think he's great. You know, I talked about this on my other channel, and they just don't care anymore. They know that they have a bunch of bonus holes. You know, America's a bunch of bonus holes. Grab them by the bonus hole, right? You know, that's what that means. It's a new term they're rolling out for the women who have more than one hole. You know, actual biological women have a bonus hole. Women who aren't biological women only have the one, but biological women have a bonus hole. And so they've just, they don't care anymore. They know that they have a captive audience and they can say and do whatever they want and get away with it. They own social media. They're running these corpses like, horrible candidates, and they can just do whatever. Puppets, and they can just, run them into office, and there's no checks and balances, and it's gotten really bad. And so there's one comment I just got. I want to address that because it just came in. And it's about my channel. And the person says this, which, again, I'm not asking for advice or any of these things, but people hear me saying that. I don't have a complaint department, and I'm not asking for your advice. When I ask for your advice, I ask for your advice. There's a guy who wrote to me about painting a truck, and he owns an auto body paint shop. I have rust on my old truck, which I mentioned in a video. So he sent me an Instagram message, and he suggested a product and that turns rust into another substance. It's like a paint. And I started to sand off the truck, and I realized, wow, I could strip this whole truck pretty easily. It's only got one coat of, it's got either an original coat of paint or a cheap coat of paint. It was repainted, but there's nothing underneath it. There's no multiple layers of primer. And, I'm not a great painter and I'm not a great automotive person, but I know enough that based on what I was doing with my little battery-operated Ryobi stripper, that, like a sand stripper, like a, whatever it's called, I could strip the truck and paint it, fairly easily. And I asked him, do I have to strip the whole truck and get it down to, the bare metal? And the guy wrote back to me and he explained what I should do. And he had a suggestion of a sealant and paint I could get on Amazon, things like that. That's me asking for advice, right? Where I'm going to somebody who knows a lot more than I do about something. And then I went and watched, before and after I've been watching YouTube videos. My wife's going to do the painting. I'm going to strip the car of the truck of the paint. She'll do the painting. She's more of the painter, I'm a more sloppy person. But we're actually kind of excited about doing this. And neither of us knows what we're doing, so we're looking for other people's advice, right? But in terms of what I'm doing here, I'm not asking for viewers' advice about my, struggles here on YouTube in terms of what YouTube has done. Because if you don't have a YouTube channel, why would you think that you should advise me? But this person took it on himself, I believe it's a man here, to advise me. It might not be a man. But this person said, there are other ways to get new subscribers than ads, and ones that will sincerely value your content. And so that's, okay, yeah, that's true. In fact, ads, I don't even know if ads work, but I'm trying everything, right? Because I'm just not making enough money now. It's just bad. And I don't think it's going to get better. I think it's going to get worse. There is the election coming up, so we'll see after that, because they run better ads. I don't know if YouTube's just paying YouTubers less, they're running less ads, or they're just closing it out. I don't know if it's going belly up. I mean, who knows? Like it seems to be imploding, which sucks, but that is what it is. But this person then says this: you offer a lot, and we're appreciative, even if we see things differently sometimes, very much so. Who's we? So this person, are you speaking for everybody? You offer a lot, and we're appreciative, even if we see things differently, sometimes very much so. And so this is a person who disagrees with me often and very much so. And there's no reason to point that out because I don't expect to agree with me. But then the person says this: for example, not banning legitimate comments that challenge you in your firm beliefs, rather engaging them and giving honest consideration, especially on some major topics, i.e. COVID and virology on the whole, just one example. So this is one person who doesn't believe COVID existed and I didn't get sick, which I made it clear to people. If you tell me I don't know what I had, you tell me I had the flu, you're going to be banned because I didn't have the flu. I know the difference between the flu and COVID and a biological weapon, and it's quite substantial. And I've had COVID 3 times now, and it's nothing like the flu. My experience is nothing like the flu. I only had the flu like once or twice in my life, and, maybe 3 or 4. I maybe I had it and, didn't think about it as the flu. But all the other illnesses I had were nothing like COVID, right? But that's neither here nor there. It's the arrogance of people saying, just because of my beliefs, I'm going to say you don't even know what your sickness was. Sometimes they'd accuse me of being a shill, which is even worse. I don't know which is worse. Saying that I'm a shill or saying I don't know the difference between the flu and COVID in my own experience, right? But the bigger point here is this person's using my struggle with YouTube and not having enough subscribers or enough viewers or being shadow banned or not making enough money and having to figure something else out, right? And, to enhance my view count and using it to bring up something that they were bothered by, and they know I have boundaries here. And so they're leaving this comment, right? How long have you been hanging on to this thing, right? Think about how long this person's hung on to this. I mean, this was 2 years ago. Like, this is all the way back to 2000 and, I don't know, early 2020 when they were all saying that COVID was, and most people have had it and realized it's real. That whatever they did wasn't the flu. It wasn't the COVID didn't exist, right? Especially on some major topics, i.e. COVID and virology on the whole, just one example. Like, that's what you want to drop on me when I'm struggling with, you're offering nothing here, and you know that I'm going to ban you for this, right? Not talking about the low-hanging fruit, which you usually make an example of on your comment videos. This is low-hanging fruit, bro. You challenge us on our beliefs, which is great. It's your channel and free to do so. You will, of course, been following you for over a decade. You've made it clear in previous comment videos that's not overly important. Maybe there are wider doors of perception that are not being knocked on, waiting for you to open. Sincerely, appreciate your content. No, you don't, because you wouldn't be leaving this comment. And the reason is the very premise of the comment, other than violating boundaries and rules that I've established here. It's the person saying, for example, not banning legitimate comments that challenge you and your firm beliefs, rather engaging them and giving honest consideration. I don't have firm beliefs. It might sound like I do, but I don't really care about my beliefs. That's why these things don't bother me, because my beliefs represent nothing, and I don't have them. When in terms of talking about this, I have, the things I believe in terms of Sage-Mark system. That's proven to me. That is, those things are unchangeable in terms of the system itself, because my understanding of the samskaric system, my understanding of the yatra points and the experiences I've had, the sittings I've had, all the experiences and the philosophy of the Sage-Mark system has held up and has only gotten better and deeper for me. And, I don't have the same conviction all the time. And even with that, and, I'm a kind of a, I fade, like my interest fades in things, and I guess that's for everybody, but it's probably more intense with me. And it's refreshed all the time by the Sage-Mark method. And even with Dodgy being a complete corrupt person and me having to, deal with that, somebody who was given the spiritual capital, become a great spiritual saint and master, and him, just completely crapping out, that still hasn't shaken my experience and faith in the system, right? And that's things I believe in. But even in that, I don't care about it. Like, I don't really, I don't need to tell everyone about that or my beliefs. And, I was talking about this with my wife quite a bit. I don't have personal conversations with people about the things that I talk about here on YouTube. Like, for the most part, I wouldn't talk about these things unless somebody, ask me to do so. My chiropractor, our chiropractor is a truther, so we talk about these things. But other than that, I don't talk about them with normies and other people. Like, this is not a topic of my conversation, and I don't really ask them about their beliefs because I don't care about them, because beliefs mean nothing. Everyone now thinks their beliefs mean something, right? But your beliefs don't mean anything. What I hope to do here is see the truth clearly, see reality clearly. And I know I have a distorted lens in the way I perceive reality, because my ability to perceive reality has gotten clearer and clearer, which meant before, when I thought I saw it all, I was wrong. And so now, as I've, gotten older and I've experienced this through the spiritual process and the cleaning process, and just, being able to see the truth clearer and clearer, I know that there's still work to do. And that's why my beliefs don't mean anything, because what you believe at one time, and there's things that you can see I've changed my beliefs in things, or the way I think about the importance of what's going on. And it's almost no importance at all, because I am basically sure as I could be, that the system's going to collapse. And I've accepted that, and that it's better if it does. If it didn't collapse, that would be a real tragedy, because it would destroy people more and more. We're being destroyed, and we're becoming worse as individuals and collectively. And we're destroying the environment, and it's going in the wrong direction. It's an ungodly system. And, that just comes from experience. And I hope I'm wrong on that, because I don't really want to, have to do all the work. There's lots of things that I'd be giving up just like the rest of you. I'm not psyched about that, but I'm not doing anything to stop that or to encourage it. I'm just preparing for it and analyzing it. But in terms of my beliefs, I don't have them. I say things about whatever I see, and you either agree with it or you don't. And sometimes you're going to agree with it, sometimes you don't. I don't know why you watch my videos, but that's between you and the video, right? Like, it has nothing to do with me, right? So my beliefs aren't, something that I'm willing to talk about, because I don't really have them, right? Like, for example, when I've been talking about the movie The Sound of Freedom, and I'm not talking about that here, I'm talking about it, which I've done recently on both channels. I don't care about it. Like, I don't care if you watch it or not. I don't think the movie's going to do any damage other than reinforce an annoying aspect of the truth community, which is the right-wing truther, the right-wing truther cubies. And, that sucks. Like, that's a bummer, and that's made it harder for all of us. And it's caused some of the problems I'm experiencing keeping this channel afloat is directly related to you cubies and you Trumpers and, right-wing idiots and disinformation agents that have made it easy to profile this, this movement. Just like Kennedy's being profiled. They want to create a profile. They're trying to make Kennedy into a right-wing, Republican in disguise, racist, anti-Semite. And even if he does a great job of not feeding into that profile, they'll still try to push it through, and there'll be lots of dopes that believe in it. And that is what it is. So, I don't, people get in arguments about beliefs, and they go to war over beliefs, and that's not how I change. I don't change over debate or talking to people. Like, I don't change because of conversations I've had. There's been conversations I've had or information I've listened to that's changed me, but that's not how I change. I change by experiencing things, and then I see stuff, and I see things differently, or I see something I wasn't able to see before. It's an internal process. So the debating part and getting feedback from you guys, I'm not interested in your beliefs. I'm not even interested in my own. Why would I be interested in yours? I've made by this point, perfectly clear. There's something else going on here. I feel like I do a very good job of analyzing what's going on a different level than most of you guys experience. And that's what makes my channel be something worth watching, right? It's one of the things that gives my channel value. But there's lots of things that I could do. I could be a better networker. I could do those videos where I do a live video and you guys leave comments and I give you guys shout outs. Or there's things I could do where I realize what my audience wants to hear and I pander to you guys, you QBs, you right-wing truthers, you whatever, liberal truthers or whatever it is, right? That I took Christians, I could become a Christian and tell people about my Christian belief. There's ways I could bring people in by being just a nicer person, or just, more, not saying things that are going to make people get pissed off. I mean, saying things that are going to make people question my beliefs or their beliefs or both. I don't know. Yeah, there's lots of ways that I could do things to retain people, but I don't want to do that, right? And I shouldn't do that because I'm being authentic, and I'm not a person that's out there bringing people in. I'm not somebody who is a person that gravitate to. And I could make more sensationalistic videos and dumb down my content. I made worse videos before that were more sensationalistic and, Illuminati videos, whatever it was. My original videos that brought people to this channel that got, some of them got millions of views. And I could make videos like that again. They wouldn't be monetizable, for one. That sucks. But also, I'm over that stuff, and I don't think that's an accurate portrayal. And so my videos are less sensationalized. The things that I say are more subtle. And it's not for the majority of people that can't, have any kind of critical thinking skills. They don't have any critical thinking skills, don't have abstract thought, and, things like that. And so, there's things I could do. There's certainly things I could do. I know those things. But if I did those, I'd be changing the essence of who I am. I would be inauthentic, and I'd just be doing it for views, right? I just can't do that. Like, why do that? Like, I could go do something else if I can't generate enough views by doing the kind of videos that I think that are, I respect, and I can put my name to them without having to be like, yeah, I'm, pandering here, all these other things. So YouTube is screwing me and so many of us. And that's not going to change. And, I have limited options. And most of you don't share my videos. And even if you did, that is limited as well. Like, I don't have enough of an audience. And you guys have limited people that might watch my videos. And so, there's no networking going on there. There's very few people who do anything to help my channel grow. People are kind of ashamed of me. Like I'm people's dirty little secret, even like people who do Heartfulness, Sajmarg. I know there's a number of them who watch at least my Journey series videos, and they don't leave comments or admit to it or any of these other things. And so, that's whatever, that's on you. That's for you to figure out. That's your choice. I can't do anything about that. And I don't get into that. I was talking about this with my wife quite a bit because, she had an interaction with, somebody, that she thought might be open to these types of ideas. And we've all been through that. And, people often react badly, especially if they're like a Democratic person who's been trained. She was talking about RFK Jr. and the person just started to quote CNN and mainstream media without ever having listened to RFK Jr. And, I said, this is how it goes. You can't change people. Most people are NPCs. And then the people who are at least open to, reflecting on themselves and changing and doing things to better themselves and do character development, which all you guys can see, at least in terms of the quality of my videos and the evolution of my thought process. I've changed quite a bit. This person said they've been around for 10 years. You can see I've changed quite a bit. And I've evolved and, in ways for the better. But then comes in with, why don't you debate COVID with me? Just inappropriate. And like, if you've been listening to it for 10 years, you wouldn't leave a comment like this. And I don't see how you value what I have to say if that's what you're hung up on, right? But I don't put any stock into, I don't get any self-esteem boost, or I don't feel bad when it doesn't happen if you guys don't listen to me. I think for the most part, you guys listen, but don't listen, right? Things that are important for you to listen to, and that's personal to you. I don't have any interaction with you other than the comment section, and I don't really know most of you, right? You guys know a lot more about me than I know about you, but I know that people just don't listen in general. And, that's not the purpose of this channel, is to get people to do what I say, or, to listen to what I say and change their lives and do these things. I simply put out information. A lot of it, to me, is an opportunity, especially the spiritual stuff, the stuff to do with gratefulness meditation, which I believe to be the solution. And I did this all along as a preceptor working for gratefulness meditation. You know, I didn't do it at first, but then I had an interaction from the third master of the system when he, wrote to me. And again, when he originally wrote to me, I didn't even know what he was talking about. But I reread the letter when I was struggling with something else. And it was like he wrote a letter that I would need in the future. Like I got it in 1993, and I read it in like 1996 or 1997. And it was because I was going through something. I was like, I think he wrote a letter to me, the master of the system. And I think he wrote a letter to me that applies to this. And he said, you do the work and you leave the results to God. And that's what I do here. I do the work the best of my ability. I analyze what's going on. I make jokes about it. I mock it, whatever it is. I have my ways. And then I move on to something else. And the subject matter I cover changes. My viewpoint changes. The lens in which I see the world changes. And I evolve. And, I have to keep it fresh, or I couldn't make the same video. There's people making the same videos that they were making 10 years ago. But in terms of beliefs, I'm not interested in yours, and I'm not really interested in mine. So having a debate over it isn't something that it would just suck the life out of me. And it's not the purpose of this channel. And it wouldn't improve the viewership, because what you're saying is you're really needy and you want to have personal interaction with me. You want to have a give and take. You want to be able to write. People want me to respond. I got a message the other day. Someone wrote me something, and then they wrote a follow-up message saying, you could do more than give me a thumbs up. That'd be great. Well, I'm not here for that, right? I don't have the time for that. And I'm not an interaction person. I'm not looking for friends. I'm not looking for social contact and things like this. And, I don't have any time for it and energy. And so that would be something that people who need that, even if they got a shout out, if I was, if I did a live video and they were, leaving comments and I said something back to them and they acknowledged them, that'd make them feel good. But that would create some sort of fandom and, like I'm some sort of celebrity or star or whatever I am, a guru or whatever. And I don't want to feed into that, right? And I would make good videos because it'd be distracting for me. I couldn't focus on what I was saying as I did the live presentation. That's why I don't do those kind of videos. It wouldn't go well for me, right? The content would suffer. My ability to express myself, which I do much better when I could just block out everything that's going on in the world, and I could just focus on, getting into like a zone and just talking like I'm holding the microphone. I got my two dogs here, and I don't have to, deal with the world, and I could just focus on what I'm saying here, what I'm thinking about, what I'm processing, what's coming through me. There's a divine connection, right? And you guys either see it or you don't. Like that's, really up to you. Like that's on your end. And people who think I need to do more, well, I'm doing as much as I can to keep this thing going, keeping it afloat. And if it ends up sinking, I'll just go do something else. And that'll suck, and I'll do this occasionally once a month, go back to doing, a weekly video or just do voiceover videos where I don't spend as much time, make a little extra income and then do something else, maybe focus on the farming and, doing whatever I can do to get our farm ready and selling farm products and things like that, right? But if something like this, if you think you're offering me something, offer something, right? You could contribute financially and you could do something that would be helpful, that I would find helpful. Like, how can I help you? What can I do to help, right? You could promote the videos, you could pray, I don't know. What could you do to help? But giving your opinion and criticizing the way I do things here and wanting more from me, right? That's specific to the needs that you have and the things that you'd like to see personally, that you'd want to, hey, I want to talk about COVID and your belief that you actually had it, right? So it's about you. This isn't about bringing more people. This is about you getting more from me, that you're not getting enough from me. I'm getting really nothing from you, as far as I can tell, but you want more from me. And even though, you said that this channel has value to you, but it would have more value if I did more for you, right? And so that's not helpful. The way you help people is you find out something they need and you do it for them, and you fill something in, right? There's things that I'm not good at, and one of them's networking and being social and, making people feel good or whatever it might be. And so, I'm a tough person to be around, and that's part of the problem here. And, that is whatever it is. And I'm not purposely pushing people away, but it's my nature to do so. And then I say things that I know people aren't going to like, and I say them anyway. I could hold them back, but you guys really want me to do that? Do you want me to, when it's something that affects you personally, it's your beliefs that are confronted, then it sucks. But when you see me do it for other people, or if it's something that you end up changing and gaining something from, hearing some different way of looking at something, it's what's valuable about the channel, and that's truth. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.